Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Facility Compliance Think Tank. My name is Lance Wolf, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's webinar. And this is the fourth webinar in a series of 5 this fall. Today's subject is increasing compliance proficiency through digital automation. The Facility Compliance Think Tank, or FCTT for short, as we say, this venture was created and is sponsored by Soleran since COVID has caused such an impact within hospitals. What it's done, it's canceled educational conventions and opportunities. So what we did is we went and handpicked the nation's top professionals in their field to help with compliance. This webinar has 2 purposes. First is we want to discuss the best practices in the areas of life safety, emergency preparedness, and other compliance-related topics during COVID. And second is this series of webinars was created to help healthcare professionals network together and share ideas. We want this network to grow. So what we want to do is we want to take those best practices and build upon them, which helps all professionals nationwide. Our members consist of directors and facility compliance leaders all over the country, and we focus on offering real-time practices throughout the webinar series. We have a couple of additional resources for you. One is we have a leadership networking group located on LinkedIn. And second is we have an online Q&A on Soleran's website for any type of compliance questions you may have. A little bit of background on me. Again, my name's Lance Wolf, and I'm the Director of Life Safety Compliance here at Soleran. I'm a former life safety code surveyor for Joint Commission, and I have 17 years of experience in hospitals as director, senior director positions for engineering, emergency preparedness, safety, biomed, security, and environmental services. So obviously during that time, that 17 years, I dealt with H1N1, SARS, Ebola, and now COVID-19. A little bit about today's speakers lineup is first we have Will Walburn. He's the VP of Business Development at Soleran. He's located in Kansas City, Missouri. Next, we have Joe Hosler. He's the facilities manager at Hurley Medical Center. Next, we're going to have Brian Schott. He's a Joint Commission environmental care specialist located at Johns Hopkins Hospital, located in Baltimore, Maryland. We really appreciate all of our speakers here taking their time out of their day to provide us with a wealth of knowledge on different topics and we want to make sure it's informative for everyone here. A little bit of housekeeping items is each panelist is going to have about 5 minutes utilizing PowerPoint slides. So take screenshots. We're going to be recording the webinar as well, and it's going to be emailed to you tomorrow in case you missed something, but feel free to use this webinar as a reference. After our speakers are presented, we're going to have about 10 minutes for a live Q&A session. So utilize this Q&A session at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. You utilize the Q&A button, not the chat button. And if your toolbar disappears, just scroll your mouse over it and it will reappear. We're going to try to answer as many questions as possible, but if we can't get there, we'll follow up with yours after if it's not answered during the webinar. If you have any questions after this is over, utilize the Think Tank Q&A online where FCTT members can interact and answer your questions. Our panelists will be involved with this network as well. And then on the last slide of presentation, we're going to have that web address on it so you can utilize the site. Well, let's go ahead and get started on our webinar. We're going to begin with some background on digital automation from Will. Will, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Lance.
Great. Thank you, Will. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks, everybody, for having me. So there's a new wave of automation and automated tools coming out right now, specifically around healthcare, and more importantly for this conversation, around healthcare facility management. That's called automated compliance management. It's really defined as the convergence of automated technology and healthcare facility compliance processes into one platform. So let's get more into this in the next slide, please. Oh, sorry. So automated compliance management, or ACM for short, is taking all of those various tools that your facility uses. Sometimes it's tens of tools, sometimes it's hundreds of disparate tools that you're using to manage your facility, to manage your assets, to manage your compliance. All of those various tools are brought into one central place. It's going to be everything like your CMMS tool, which is your core foundational piece, your door inspections, how do you process your PICRAs, your ICRAs, your ILSMs, your rounding that needs to take place, easy tours, even though it's so incredibly valuable, even though it's not mandated by the Joint Commission anymore. How do you map assets across your facility, and where are you getting your mock surveys done? All that information is stuff that's used to run your daily life, your daily world. And it's typically done in separate systems and that don't communicate together. Next slide, please. So ACM is the convergence of all of that. It's taking all of those disparate tools and putting them into one place. So there's 3 major quadrants. So CMMS, project management, and rounding. So let's break them, each one of them down one by one. Next slide, please. So the first quadrant is your CMMS tool. So your preventative maintenance, your corrective. Again, it's what runs your facility, right? So it's what you're doing proactively to make sure your assets are running to its maximum efficiency, to maximize its lifespan. That's all done through your preventative maintenance. And then your corrective is anything that's broken. So, and then you have planned events that, you have to do certain things at certain cycles. So, and that spans obviously both facilities and biomed. Next slide, please. So the second major bucket is project management. So anything that you're doing and that new in the hospital you're building. So, I travel all over the country, and every hospital I go to is doing construction, as you guys know better than I do. So with all that construction, there's a lot of risk to mitigate when you're looking into new projects. That's going to be everything from how do you manage risk through like pre-construction risk assessments, your ICRAs, your ILSMs, and then all the way through financing and budgeting that you have to do projects that you have to do for those projects that you guys are responsible for as well. Next slide, please. And then finally, to fill in the gaps, how do you pick up the things that your brand new build projects and your reactive and proactive maintenance isn't picking up? And that's your rounding. It's your catch-all. That's when you guys are going around the hospital, blanking every floor, every building, with things like tracers and EC tours. So you can find those little things that slip through the cracks that you're proactive and corrective don't catch. And obviously by going out and finding those, then it helps you guys be more proactive in doing that. And another thing that's very, very helpful is mock surveys by a third-party vendor. Next slide, please. So finally, all that stuff needs to be gathered in really, really good compliance reporting. That's going to be everything, not only the basic things, your CMS, like your time tracking to manage your day-to-day, but do you have the relevant reports ready and available for you for your next survey? So, when the surveyor comes and you're sitting there at your first half day doing your document review, it's so important that you have all those documents at your fingertips. I think I just learned last week I was on a mock survey and found out that the time frame for your documentation review went from, I think, from 120 minutes to now it's down to 90. So obviously you definitely need to have things prepared and ready to go. So if you can have all of that in one system that pulls all that information together, makes it nice and concise, then it's going to make that survey so much easier. Sorry. Also, and I know a lot of people on here will probably fight me on this, but surveyors are ready and open to electronic documentation. So, and I know Lance is on here and he's a former Joint Commission surveyor, so he can definitely back me up on that. But the Joint Commission is really branching into the electronic space, and it really is an initiative of theirs. Next slide, please. So what are the main components of an ACM tool? So ACM, the reason is not just electronic filing of information, it's proactive, it's automated, meaning it actually does work for you. It actually does a lot of work for you. It's going to be things like automated scheduling. Does it do it proactively for you? Mobile task management. Are you using mobile devices to help you make you more proactive while you're out in the field so you're not coming back and picking up paper, which wastes time? Benchmarking. Do you know how you're doing across your entire organization, your system? Deficiency assignments. Is your system smart enough to know that once it's past a certain time frame, is it going to escalate appropriately? Automated closeouts. Do things get closed out on a timely manner? And so they're not lingering, so that on your next survey, everything is nice and concise and ready to go. Next slide, please. So that's automated compliance management. And the way you grasp this is it's tools you use that come together in one platform and they all communicate together. So again, I have to say it again because it's very important. It's one platform and they all communicate together. So again, I've been to hospitals all over the country and I see people using a CMS tool for this. And then they have another tool they use to go do for their rounding. They have another tool they go use for their extinguishers. And generally none of those talk to each other. So you're having to do it in multiple places. So the key is they all need to communicate together. But the best part, the most important part, is that you have reporting on all of that information ready at your fingertips. So we truly encourage you to reach out to some of those organizations. And of course, we're completely happy to talk to you as well. That's all I have, Lance. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Will, for the information. That was a lot of information, and you're absolutely right. You had some great points on in regards to the transition from paper to automated. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about automated reporting on a surveyor's perspective. So next slide, please. Here's some of the misconceptions with on surveyors' perspectives. The biggest misconception, and this comes by both by comments made by surveyors and by just complete the trend, is that surveyors require paper to be provided to them, and that's not true. As Will talked about, all it has to have is it has to be readily accessible. The other misconception is surveyors prefer binders. And that comes, part of that is by companies coming out there like EC compliance binders, which put out a series of binders that help keep your paperwork organized. But the key is the accrediting organizations, they don't require paperwork to be filed in binders. And this part has been a trend that's been coming in the last couple of years. And then part of it too is that they're saying that there's been statements, well, your paperwork backup is required to be backup. No, the only backup that's required is your SDS. Everything else in regards to your regulatory testing, there is no requirement for paperwork backup. It just has to be accessible. So you have to be in a cloud program. The key is you don't want to lose your information. Next slide, please. So reasons for the paperwork and why we've had paperwork in the past. Well, first, just the technology was not available to accommodate the reports. And additionally, as I talked about in the last slide, is surveyors have made statements that they wanted something paper, something physical in their hand. And that's a thought process from the prior years. That's no longer the case. Another one is we've just always done it that way. Always done it that way. We have this system in place and it's worked. But additionally, part of this is because of technology now that's coming out. It intimidates the users that have always used the paperwork. And the last part, and we still fight with this, and directors fight with this on a daily basis, is a lot of vendors resist electronic reports. And that's one area that you'll need to focus on as a facilities director, is really start pushing your vendors that are still coming in with paperwork to start working for electronic reports. So you're able to put that into a system and you're able to save it over a period of time. Next slide, please. So some of the current trends that we're seeing right now is, one, these vendors are slowly reverting to electronic reports. And additionally, with the accrediting organizations, and this is as recently of the ASHE webinar on August 19th of this year, they indicated that they don't have an opinion between automated and paper reports. And on this webinar was additionally was DNV and Joint Commission, and they both said that the biggest key for them is you just have to have it readily accessible. Another trend is you got entry-level workers in the workforce that are technology-based, and they're actually more comfortable with technology-based automation than they are with paperwork. They feel like they can stay more organized with the technology-based applications. And then last, the reports can be tracked easier by automation. There's a check and balance system built into it, so that helps you with your organization. Next slide, please. So here's some suggestions for automated transition. One, it's a departmental decision. Get with your department and make sure that you utilize, their opinions and ask them what they want to do. Also, additionally, get different vendors out there and bring in examples to help make that departmental decision. If you make it from the C-suite or upper suite, you're gonna have pushback, and chances are your system's gonna fail just because you didn't have that departmental buy-in. Second is make sure your first year is both paperwork and automation for that transition, okay? You're gonna want that paper backup in case you have any problems with your transition, or your transition for whatever reason stops. You're already still survey ready. Next is organization is essential during this transition process, and I can't stress this enough, because you're going to be dealing with two different systems, a paperwork system, an automated system, and to have that automated backup. But you want to make sure that your organization is exactly the same between the two. I also recommend an administrator for program for audits. So when you're doing that transition, and even from that point on, have an administrator that goes in and audits things, throughout your program to make sure that you're staying up on top of your paperwork. Yes, there's a check and balance in there, but what that auditor is going to be doing is going in and actually physically going further into the documents and the reports that are being uploaded to make sure that everything's clear and correct on them. I also recommend have at least two individuals familiar with the reports to present for surveys. I had a specific example occur when I was surveying. We were at one facility and they had automated, everything was automated. But the problem was that the individual that took care of the program, they got called away on a critical issue within the hospital. So we were sitting there just waiting and trying to fumble around and try to find the reports. Well, what this did is this added on to their documentation, and as I was trying to find reports as a surveyor, I was sitting there, and it gave me the ability to start digging more into reports, which essentially what happens, I found more findings as a result. So have two individuals that are familiar with that to where one can jump right in, or if one's sick, always have that backup there. And then last is start requiring your vendors to provide electronic reports. Go ahead and start, let them know that this is going to be a requirement from this point on. And they'll fight with you, they'll push back, but eventually they don't want to lose that business, so they will. Next slide, please. Well, that's all I had. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Joe Hosler. And Joe's going to talk about why the decision to switch to digital automation and give some examples that he's dealt with. Joe, it looks like you're there.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Lance.
All right, thank you.
My name's Joe Hosler. Currently, I'm the Facilities Operations Manager at Hurley Medical Center here in Flint, Michigan. Some of my past experience, I've worked at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak as a construction service supervisor and large loss restoration project manager. In all these fields, I've had a few different roles, and digital automation has been helpful in each one. Why to switch to digital automation? As you can see from the list, there's endless advantages to why. One of the best reasons is you have this 24/7 wherever you're at. A few of us are control freaks and we like to keep our eye on everything when we're on vacation, and this gives you the advantage to do that. Next slide, please. Compliance. We all know about compliance between the Joint Commission, Fire Marshal, CMS. Compliance is always out there. Digital automation allows you to have the tools to eliminate some of the books, as some of the other folks said, and get everything in one location. Next slide, please. Daily work orders and PMs, huge time saver. Less clutter on the desk, less handwritten notes, automatic notifications. You can get dinged when you have a new work order that comes in, those types of things. A lot of the folks I've worked with in the past use the paper and pocket technique, which is where you have work orders just keep growing out in your pocket and you do them as you feel need. This gives a better way to track that and be more efficient. Next slide, please. Preventative maintenance and the AEM program. Digital automation allows us to stay on top of all our PMs, reporting the PMs out with one click of the mouse. It's very beneficial. Next slide, please. PICRA's pre-construction risk assessment. Everyone does a lot of construction in the hospital, and what I've noticed in some of my positions is everybody's in different silos, and no one really communicates. Having a pre-construction risk assessment gives an avenue for different trades and different contractors, all the team members to talk electronically. Next slide, please. ICRAs and ILSMs. These are important for construction in a hospital as well. The infection control department, they're really heavy on their ILSMs, or on their ICRAs and tracking them and having documentation that they've been inspected daily, weekly, whatever the case may be. Same thing with the safety department and the interim life safety measures. This gives everyone an electronically way to speak to each other throughout the departments in the hospital. Next slide, please. Budgeting. We're always told to do more with less, right? So digital automation gives a way to budget, to actually see what equipment's being used, what breaks more, how much FTEs we need, how much time is being spent on the job. So with having all this information in the program, easily supported data, the C-suite loves to see that when you're looking for more FTEs. Next slide, please. Other benefits to use digital automation, we here use above ceiling permitting and a water management program. Bottom line, the ability to have all the needed information and records at a click of a mouse will not only make the employees and managers more efficient, will more importantly, make your department and organization more efficient. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Joe. And appreciate you going through and just using examples that you're utilizing on a daily basis, and and how that's able to transition across to automation. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to Brian Schott, and Brian's going to talk about positive examples of digital automation helping with organization and compliance. So, Brian, you there?
I'm here, Lance. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, take it away. Thank you.
No problem. So hi, my name is Brian Schott. I am a Joint Commission Specialist for Johns Hopkins Hospital. Next slide. I have over 20 years of experience providing strategic accreditation, clinical regulatory guidance at Johns Hopkins Hospital and School of Medicine. I currently serve as a PPE commander at the Unified COVID Command Center. I also work tirelessly to secure PPE during the pandemic for COVID. Next slide. So I've been using digital automation now for, I guess, around 5 years. Back in the day when we used to go out and do rounds, it used to take forever to get reports out to managers. Certain deficiencies would not get fixed until the surveyor or the nurse manager or manager received the reporting from you. With the digital automation, what it's allowed me to do is get these reports out in real time. Which is great. So I will do a report, and before I leave the unit, that nurse manager or manager of the area has the report. They can fix the problem there, or you can fix it with them even before they get the report. So this is a great tool and gives you the time to just get this to them really fast and to make them feel confident that they're getting things fixed in an orderly time. After digital automations, the findings can be seen by the manager in real time, like I mentioned, corrected on the spot or the same day of the finding. In the past, you go back to your office, you get a report out, and it takes a few days to get the report out. The manager looks at it. In that time, you could have CMS show up, you could have Joint Commission show up, or it could be an infection or some type of thing from that finding you found could cause something to someone on the unit. So what this allows you really to do is just to have that fixed and have you peace of mind and the unit manager peace of mind that things are moving in an orderly fashion. Next slide. The other great thing with digital automation is just the flexibility to do things on the fly, and once again, just get things in right away. For instance, we use Maximo as our work order system at Johns Hopkins. We have our platform connected to Maximo. So whenever we have a finding in the field that's a facilities work order or a work order in general, we have the ability to do that right in the field. Literally right in the finding, you click fail, and you also click over on a work order. It's going to send a signal to Maximo, and it also directs it to the correct shop. So that work order gets started that day. So this has really helped us in just becoming more efficient and just having things put in, not waiting for, to go back to your computer. It really saves paper. It just saves a lot of things. And it's really nice and gives people kind of the feeling of relief when they're next to you, and you could just tell them, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I put that work order in just now. Just like that, by the snap of my finger, or just the slide of my finger, I guess I should say. Next slide. Last but not least, the great thing about digital compliance is the ability for you to create dashboards to track all the disciplines that you're looking at in environmental care and life safety. You have the ability to create pie graphs that are going to show where you're getting the bulk of deficiencies, what disciplines, if it's facilities, if it's infection control. Also, you have the ability to have your top 10 findings. So what this really does is, and it's not just top 5, you can have top 5, 10, you can set it up however you want, but it gives you the ability to see where your problem areas really are and to focus on fixing those, knowing your vulnerabilities. So this has really helped me just to go to board meetings to make leadership feel that things are actually being tracked and that we're being accountable for our actions, and we're really focusing on those units or those findings that could potentially be issues when Joint Commission or some regulatory agency comes to your facility. Next slide.
Great. Well, thanks, Brian. That was excellent. There's a lot of examples on how digital automation for you has really sped up the process. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and do some question and answers that we have. And so we'll let you, take a little time to put in some of your answers, but we already have some in the queue already. And so the first one we have is for Joe Hosler. Joe will be jumping up here in a second. There he is. So Joe, the question is what suggestions do you have for a facility director that's looking to further automation within their maintenance program?
Sure. Best advice would be first to pick a product that fits your organization. Before selecting the product, get some buy-in from your staff to what you want to really accomplish with your digital automation. Finally, I would make sure that the product selected has the ability to grow within the needs of the organization.
Great, thank you. And we got another one here, and Brian, you've already talked about this a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind taking this one, is how has digital automation helped your staff increase efficiency within your department? You've already spoke about it, and I'm sure you can enhance that a little bit more on that topic.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. I think I did mention it. Well, it just allows you really to focus on the areas you feel that you're vulnerable at. So when you see that for instance, you're seeing a lot of oxygen cylinders not stored correctly, or other things in the hospital that might catch your eye, that you have an issue there. Certain units are performing better than other units, and units that need improvement. So it really allows you to the ability to really get your priorities straight and say, hey, I want to focus on this and make sure this gets figured out. Infection control issue could be it could cause a hospital infection. So fixing those things right away is just really going to help you in the long run and make things proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're dealing with it at the time to where it's still, it's still direct, in the forefront and not something that's been, forgot over a period of time. So we got another one here, and I think I will take this one on. And the question is were there any pitfalls to increasing digital automation within your facility? So I'll go back to when I was working as director, as senior director in the facility, the pitfalls that I had that I dealt with directly, and the most common one that really comes to the forefront is I had a lot of pushback with the staff in regards to they were unfamiliar with the programs, and they, because they were unfamiliar, it somewhat scared them a little bit to be able to utilize programs because they were afraid they were going to hurt it. So it took a little bit extra time to sit down with staff and really train them and get them comfortable to the point, because it was something that they hadn't been used to utilizing in the past. And once we got there through that point, it really was, it really increased the efficiency within the department. And then once they were comfortable with it and really started working with it on a daily basis, then I started getting a lot of positive feedback from them, saying that they really were excited on how much it was helping them with their daily duties. So that would be the one thing, the pitfall. If I had to focus on one, that would be it. Would just be the pushback at first because of the technology. Well, it looks like that's it for. We've covered a lot of questions. It looks like that's it for our questions and answers for today. So that's going to be the end of today's topic. So we want to thank Joe and Brian and Will for your time. This was a great presentation. It was everything presented that we could all benefit from, and a lot of excellent examples. Yeah, thank you very much for your time today. A little bit of reminders. One, you're going to get tomorrow with an email that has the link to this webinar. And we want to encourage you to share this information with your colleagues and get them involved with our future webinars. As we say in each webinar, we want to see everybody expand, the network and the knowledge. And we want to keep going within the future, especially for our spring webinars as well. So our next webinar is going to be December 10th at 1 p.m. and that's Central Standard Time. And the subject is going to be exploring the pitfalls of specializing trades within the engineering department. We got some great speakers already lined up, and the registration's open, and it's always free, and it's located at www.soleran.com/think tank. So we look forward to working with you again, and we encourage you to use Facility Compliance Think Tank Q&A on our group LinkedIn, and to get additional questions answered by the industry experts. As we said earlier, our panelists here for this one and for prior ones are going to be involved with this, and they'll be able to help with any questions that you may have. So we want to remind everyone that this is an area to interact with other professionals in the field, and our panel experts are going to be included in this group, and they'll even ask questions to us as well. So that's going to conclude today's webinar. Soleran and our speakers, we want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in December. Thank you.